Some heavy bursts expected at times. It will be a mild but increasingly windy day, especially to the lee of higher ground. It will be a dry and generally cloudy start to today across northeast England. Rain will start to move in from the southwest through this morning with some heavy spells at times, becoming windy. A dry but icy start across southern Scotland this morning with some clear spells. Rain will move into the far south towards midday, though this will be mostly light at first. A band of rain will spread northeastwards across Northern Ireland through this morning with some heavy bursts expected, becoming breezy towards midday, especially around northern and eastern coasts. Rain will continue northeastwards with strong winds becoming widespread, and showers will follow this evening, some of which will be heavy. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. I hope you've had a lovely few days and managed to get through with your liver and your relationships intact. I did, just about. On today's show, more travel chaos as strikes continue. Border Force workers are walking out today at UK airports until New Year's Eve. We'll speak to our reporter at Gatwick. And as we take a breather between the week's big celebrations, let's look at the year ahead and consider how the political landscape might change in 2023. And I know it's a bit mean before New Year's Eve, but I'm going to be joined in the studio by two health experts to talk about getting fit and staying well in the new year. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you. Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 1 minute past 10. Border Force staff and driving instructors are the latest to stage industrial action, with travel disruption also expected along the rail network as commuters return to work today. Members of the PCS union representing Border Force staff at multiple UK airports will continue their industrial action over pay, jobs and conditions. Driving instructors have begun a 5-day strike affecting more than 70 testing centres in eastern England and the Midlands. Meanwhile, on the rail network, TSSA union members will walk out from midday, causing disruption on the Great Western Railway and West Midlands trains. While travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder, told GB News the unions are losing power.
Well, we got this odd little message coming from the RMT union on Christmas Eve saying, where's the ministers? We want to talk to them. I think there is the sense that talking to individual railway men and women, those in the front line doing fantastic work, they're exhausted. They have lost hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds. And, well, the whole idea of the unions is this is an essential industry. Trouble is, the travelling public is sort of saying, no, you're not.
Pope Francis has asked for prayers for his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, saying he's very sick. The 95-year-old former head of the Catholic Church became the first pope in 600 years to resign when he stepped down in 2013. He's been living in the Vatican since then. Pope Francis, seen on the left here, made the surprise announcement at the end of his general audience, but didn't give any further details.
I would like to ask all of you for a special prayer for Pope Emeritus Benedict, who, in silence, is sustaining the Church. Let us remember him. He is very sick, asking the Lord to console and sustain him in this witness of love for the Church until the end.
The family of a 23-year-old man who was stabbed to death at a nightclub on Boxing Day say their hearts are broken. Semi-professional footballer Cody Fisher was attacked on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub in Birmingham. In a statement, his family say they've lost their best friend. Hundreds of people were in the club at the time. West Midlands police are urging anyone with information to come forward. 4 people have been injured in a suspected gas explosion at a house in Worcestershire. Emergency services were called to the incident in Emission last night, shortly after 5 o'clock. 3 of the injured were taken to hospital and 10 neighbouring properties were evacuated. The northeast of England could be the latest region to have a directly elected mayor as the government announces a £1.4 billion devolution deal. The arrangement would give powers over education, transport and housing to people across Northumberland, Newcastle and Sunderland. Elections for the new mayor would take place in May 2024 after a consultation process. Labour is warning families are losing millions of pounds due to unsolved crimes. The party says more than 1 million thefts went unsolved last year, with cases dropped because police failed to find a suspect. Labour's called the figures disgraceful. A Home Office spokesperson says the government provided record investment in policing alongside the recruitment of 20,000 additional officers by March 2023. In the US, the death toll in and around the city of Buffalo has risen to 32 as the country is battling a deadly winter storm. Authorities in the New York state have been digging out from under 4 feet of snow after a record amount of snowfall there. At least 60 people have died as the monster storm has battered North America over the last week. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now, though, it's back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for joining me. Well done, mums and grannies, OK, and a few blokes as well, for making Christmas a success. Take a breather now, pick at the chocolates and keep me on until 12. Members of the armed forces have stepped up across the UK as Border Force staff strike at our airports again. We're going to be live at Gatwick to see if it's having the disruptive effect that the unions are hoping for. The last year has been a political cluster of chaos. The country has seen 4 chancellors and 3 prime ministers. So Keir Starmer's Labour Party are well ahead in the polls. So can the Tory party claw back support? And if so, how long will that take? What does 2023 have in store politically for the country? I'm going to be speaking to some experts about that. And like me, you've probably eaten and drunk way too much this week. But how do you tell if your drinking is becoming problematic? I'm going to be joined by Don McGregor, who's been sober for 6 years, and he'll be telling us about how to approach dry January. He might have to do a bit to convince me that's a good idea. Let me know what you think. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews to have your say on anything we're discussing this morning. So, Border Force staff have walked out today at UK airports until New Year's Eve. The PCS union has warned that industrial action could continue for months unless the government enters into talks over pay, jobs and conditions. It coincides with further disruption on the railways as many commuters return to work during this little break between Christmas and New Year. So our national reporter Theo Chicumba is live at Gatwick Airport this morning. Good morning, Theo. Looking like a miserable day, and particularly miserable if you arrive to get on an aeroplane and you can't. What's it like down there?
Yes, good morning. I'm here at Gatwick. It's been wet and windy for passengers who are going in and out of the airport. It's another strike day for them. They did have some strike dates last week, but today is the first of a number of them we're going to be seeing this week. In terms of disruption, last week airport bosses were saying it was free-flowing, traffic was moving smoothly inside the airport, so passengers were able to get in and out. But Mark Sawatka, who's the General Secretary of the PCS union, is saying the government are putting a plaster over what they're saying is an opportunity to sit down and discuss and improve the pay deal that they've been offered. So 2% is what members have been offered. In terms of people inside, military personnel and sailors, we've heard reports of that. They're the ones who are in there at the moment letting passengers through, so no immigration officers on deck today. But in terms of moving forward, there hasn't been an opportunity yet for members to say, okay, this is a right deal that's good for us, particularly with the cost of living problem that we're seeing across the country at the moment. So 2%, while inflation is at around 10%, they say it needs to get to that stage so that we can call off the strike. They're saying they have a mandate to continue these strikes for up to 6 months. So if there isn't a deal which is negotiated by both parties, we could see further strikes over the next couple of months. But in terms of disruption, it has been free-flowing over the last couple of days, and of course today as well.
OK, Theo, thank you so much. GBNews national reporter there, Theo Chicumba. So I'm joined now by Deputy Editor of Spiked Online, Fraser Myers, and also former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Good morning, gentlemen. I think you are both there. I'm looking for Kelvin. He's not there. He is. OK. Morning, guys. Now, you look at that, Kelvin Mackenzie, down at the airport. We've had a tough few years, most people. All they want to do is get on an aeroplane, go and enjoy some sunshine, get away from the hideous rain we've just seen Theo stood beneath. What's your reaction when you hear about more strikes from the PCS workers?
Well, to deal with those border force workers, of course, we want them to stay on strike for as long as possible. The reality is that everything is free-flowing, and despite all these messages of doom and gloom from organised labour in our country, strangely, we have got on rather well with the fact that loads of state workers have been out on strike, and it may be that we don't need them. We certainly approved, as Simon Calder was reflecting on, we certainly don't need the number of train employees. We don't need post office workers. And now it appears that we don't even need border force employees. And so I say carry on striking for as long as you like. They are trying to hurt us. The people that pay their wages, they're trying to damage ordinary taxpayers and ordinary people, and it's turned out that it hasn't worked out the way they wanted to, and I am very, very grateful for them.
Not great for the armed forces who are having to step in, though, Calvin, at the moment. I take your point that it's working well.
OK, Bev, that's a very good point, and it's actually my point, that we should not be allowing people who have us, who think they have us by the proverbials, right, to actually walk out at 100%. There should be a minimum amount of work that they have to do. Oh dear, state workers having to do work. Oh, excuse me, how terrible. So actually, I am 100% in favour of actually a legislation which I hope the Conservatives will bring in, which will stop 100% of walkouts. But your colleague there may disagree with me.
Fraser, the front page of the Mail today is talking about this. This story is extraordinary. Loyalty cards for strikers. So basically what's happening is there are some, the papers are calling union barons. I guess that's a decent name for them. They've launched a loyalty card scheme, which means that you can be rewarded for turning up on picket lines, like the flying pickets, go around. It's not necessarily the industry that you're striking for, but to swell the numbers. Isn't that just a truly disgusting thing to do?
I think we are long out of the age of union barons. I think those kinds of references are about 40 years out of date. The unions have never been less powerful in this country, and as a result, workers have never been less powerful. And Kelvin might think that's a good thing, but there are millions of people who are getting a below inflation pay rise, which means the real terms pay cut. We're now living through the worst squeeze in living standards since the Napoleonic Wars. That's a serious problem. That's why people are asking for 10%, which might sound like a big figure, but that's only to keep in line with inflation. And one thing that's been missed on the kind of border staff, it's not just that it's not about them being lazy or about them being ineffective. The fact is that the Navy and the Army people who are taking over actually don't have the authority to stop people. So actually, a lot of people, yes, things are flowing because a lot of people are getting through. A lot of people who should be being stopped right now are getting through. So there is a problem. There's less disruption for the average traveller, but our borders are now totally porous. I mean, you might say they're like that anyway. This is clearly an area that is underinvested in. It's a big priority for the government. Rishi Sunak says the border is his main focus. I don't know how that is going to be. How is he going to make it his focus if it's so under-resourced, if staff are grumpy, if things aren't working?
Kelvin, have you always been very much against the right of workers to strike, or has that been crystallised particularly at the end of 2022?
It's got nothing to do with 22. I worked in the print during the 70s and the 80s. An absolute nightmare. Basically, highly paid thugs working for the NGA and SOGAT, making life impossible for ordinary, for the production of the paper. And that actually manufactured my view of today. But I'm very grateful, anyway, to the way that we have managed to circumvent the problems of the railways. 20-odd years ago, if the railways had gone on strike, as therefore, or the RMT, the nation would have come to a grinding halt. That moment has now come because somebody has actually pointed out there is something called a car or even a coach or even a bus, although I see in London that they're planning, the bus drivers are going out on strike. So, the reality of it is that we are now circumventing through tech and actually the fact that the individual is more important than the collective. And I agree with your speaker that the trade unions have never been weaker. And I am absolutely delighted when you think that ambulance people were prepared to leave your mum lying on the floor with a broken hip and having had a stroke, leaving them for hours on end. I have never heard anything so disgraceful in all my life. Organised labour should hang their head in shame.
But here's the pushback then, Kelvin. So this is what I'm interested in. But we are now living in, because it's not the 70s and the 80s now, and we've never lived in a time where they've got more corporate power, more centralised power. The Sun newspaper was always the newspaper of the working man. It was the person that picked up the paper on their way to work. So what do you say to those people? Because they would say, well, come on, we need some strength. We need some power to our elbow. We're not getting paid enough. We've got terrible working conditions. We've got so many 0 hours contracts. We're not being respected as workers. Just kind of put yourself in their shoes for a minute. Do you have any sympathy with them?
I don't accept your 0 0 hours argument. I'm sure the other speaker might well do, but the 0 hours actually falls in line with people's working practices and the way they view work today. The reality is that we haven't got enough people, we haven't got enough workers to do the work. I've never known an individual be so powerful in my life. And I'm 100% in favour of it. What I don't like is when I see collective force saying we're going to batter you into the ground till you give us the money we want. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not in favour of 2% for border force employees. Yes, and in the end of the day, there will be a deal to be done. But nor am I in favour of the 10 and 11%, which all it does is keep inflation flowing through the system. Nobody wants that. That damages everybody, whether you are a trade union employee or you're some corporate or even some entrepreneurial type.
OK, Fraser Myers, last word to you then. Do you see these strikes just rumbling on into 2023? Is there anything that this government can do to draw a line in the sand for people who just want to go about their business?
I think the government needs to take these strikes seriously and needs to, I think it's not going to meet their demands entirely, but at the moment it feels like the government isn't even willing to come to the table. I mean, the other thing is, Kelvin's right, we need to get a grip on inflation as well. That's the reason these pay demands are so high. And the government's only going to get a grip on inflation if it gets a grip on the energy situation. And at the moment, it seems pretty determined to treat that as a kind of emergency thing. It has no long-term plans for bringing down the cost of energy. In fact, the long-term policy is to raise the cost of energy through net zero. So there's all kinds of things the government could be doing on top of dealing with these strikes, on top of raising the level of pay. And I don't see that it's doing that. OK, all right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this different kind of week, isn't it? This little period between Christmas and New Year. Former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and from Spiked Online, Fraser Myers. Right, we're going to take a quick break. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to my guest for the first time today. We're going to be looking at all the stories in the paper. We've got Claire Pearsall and Sunday People editor Nigel Nelson. He also happens to be her husband. And owner of the bar Jones & Sons, Andy Jones, to find out what hospitality is going to be facing in the new year, though. Time for a quick break first.
Very good morning. It's 10:22. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, 2022 was the year of financial reckoning. Thanks to unscientific lockdown policies, we've endured a year of political and economic turmoil, with the country seeing 4 chancellors and 3 prime ministers. Labour's Sir Keir Starmer has surged ahead of the polls, with many members of the public unable to trust the Conservative anymore. Is there anything that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak can do in the year ahead to ensure victory in the next general election? Well, let's bring in our 2 guests. Joining me now is political commentator Suzanne Evans and former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Good morning, both of you. I think I'm going to see you down the line. That was Claire Pearsall you just got a glimpse of there, one of our guests. Claire's here as well. Right, Suzanne and Peter, lovely to see you this morning. Right, Suzanne, let me start with you. It's a terrible prognosis going into 2023 for Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. If and when could they turn around their popularity?
Well, they certainly could, but I think it would take a huge amount of effort. Let's just have a look at the state of the polls, shall we? So at the moment, the Labour Party is polling anything between 45% and 51%, I think is the highest poll rating that they've had so far. The Conservatives, meanwhile, are languishing on around about 23 to 28. There was one poll, I think, put them at 32, perhaps a little bit of an outlier. Then we've got the Lib Dems on 8 or 9, and then the other minor parties making up the rest of the percentage. So not really any strong showing for minor parties making a breakthrough, I don't think, yet at the next election. So, yeah, it's looking extremely bleak for Rishi Sunak. Ben Walker of Britain Elects has done some quite interesting research talking about how people who are core Conservative voters might very well say they're going to vote Labour in the mid of a parliamentary term, but then they revert back to type. But and of course, it works the other way as well. But the swing there is only around about 9%. So, yeah, looking really, really bad. What could he do? I don't really think he could do anything apart from a major volte-face, really, and I don't think that's going to happen. We've got a Conservative government that in many ways is behaving very much like a Labour government. We've got the highest taxation burden in 70 years. We've got very high public spending. We've got a big state. We've got an absolute failure to control immigration. So it is perhaps also odd that Conservative voters are swinging to Labour because, to be honest, you can't really put a cigarette paper between the two of them at the moment. And I think the only way that... Sorry, Bev. I did interrupt you, sorry.
No, it's OK. I just want to bring Peter in as well. You must be delighted we've got a socialist government.
We don't at all have a socialist government. I don't accept the idea that you can't put cigarette paper between Labour and the Tories. Excuse me, but let's not go over old ground. I think the reason Labour won't be complacent at all, to pick up on some of the polling information that's very interesting, is also not just mid-term, but the number of don't knows. So we see this humongous Labour lead, it reaches Blair-like levels of above 20%. Ed Miliband got above 10. So if you're getting above 20%, it's looking really good. But first of all, excludes the don't knows, and they're going to crystallise or not vote. So that's one reason not to be complacent. Secondly, the government can do things, whereas the opposition can only announce things. So we already know from the leadership election that inflation was really Sunak's priority coming into office. Now we have the small boats crisis as well. Now, I don't think Rishi Sunak is the right man to handle it, and I don't think he's got the answers. But you can expect, basically from January the 1st, measure after measure after measure on inflation and small boats crisis. I don't think he's got the tools to resolve these problems, but an awful lot is going to change. And there may not be an election in for 10 or 11 months, but obviously it's a brave person who makes predictions these days.
Well, guys, we've run out of time. Thank you so much. Quick hit with you both, but always nice to see you. Suzanne Evans there and Peter Edwards. I've got to bring in my guests. You've already seen a glimpse of one of them. Former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall is with us. Political editor at the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Who's looking after your kids when you hear you two?
He's off with his dad, so we've got to say today.
Just checking you weren't. There was nothing we had to report you for here. And owner of the bar, Jones and Sons, Andy Jones, is with us now. Right, thank you all for giving up your time this week. Let's go to your first story. Claire, you're doing this one for us. This is rail workers are going to be balloted again on strike action under a new tactic to help them to strike more.
Exactly. So here is another tactic that we've got. Union leaders plan to poll different groups of workers separately. So you'll get this kind of rolling strike situation. It will be consecutive days, different groups. Could turn out one day you might have train drivers, but no signalling staff or no station staff. And it just has that sort of mass impact on the commuting public, which we've already had, to be honest, but this is now going to look at consecutive days, multiple walkouts and even more disruption.
Nigel, I don't know whether you saw the interview that I just did with Kelvin McKenzie, but Kelvin is furious about these strikes and that the powers...
Kelvin's always furious.
Yeah, it comes with the territory, doesn't it? But he would like to have these powers stripped from these unions so that they cannot strike.
Well,
what's your thought on that?
I think Claire would go along with that one too. The right to strike is fundamental. There's been an awful lot of anti-trade union legislation to make it more and more difficult. So the rolling strikes are understandable because what they want to do is try and make them effective. They can't have a general strike. I think if it was possible, you would have a general strike now, but it's not. So they need to make it effective. The government are talking about watering down the powers even more for strike actions. So the minimum services they're talking about for the railways. Well, the whole thing is the reason you go on strike is because you've come to the end of the road with negotiations, and it's a way of getting negotiations going again. To turn around and make strikes ineffective makes that whole process completely redundant.
Andy, let me come to you, because you have experience, obviously you run restaurants and bars and hospitality.
Yeah.
How disruptive is this sort of transport chaos when you're in your industry?
It's a mess. The whole thing is a mess, from my staff trying to get to work on the weekends, everybody showing up late, kind of our WhatsApp groups popping off with, I can't get into work today, I can't get here today, I'm going to be an hour late. That doesn't help me run a business. From our customers coming in, exactly the same things. They have booking times. It's a mess. And when is this going to end? It's across every sector at the moment. It just seems a real pain in the you-know-where to get anything done at the moment.
But I wonder what that's going to look like politically, because you sort of think, as you know, we look down the lens towards 2023. Who is that going to affect? Because if Labour, as unions major donors to Labour, they're quite happy about this disruption. Doesn't this make voting for Labour in the next general election a much more appealing option? People go, nothing works in this country, we need a new government. Then the unions have won, Claire.
I think you're right, and it feels to me very much as if it's the unions looking to bring down the government.
Yeah.
That's how it feels, a very concerted effort getting together to bring down a government, which isn't right. That isn't democracy. However, I can't see that voting for Labour is going to change that, because train workers, NHS staff will still be in the same position unless Labour can magic up some money from somewhere, and they haven't told us quite where that's going to come from and what it's going to do. So it's a very difficult position for the Conservative Party. They need to remain strong on this, but there is going to have to be some movement, otherwise the country really is just grinding to a halt.
It really is, which kind of brings us on to this story as well, Nigel, doesn't it? Loyalty cards for strikers.
Yes, I mean, it's not quite sort of giving them nectar cards or anything like that, but the idea is it's a group called Strike Map, and they put up an idea which the trade unions back for a little bit of prizes for people who go on picket lines. So, in fact, it'll be a T-shirt or something like that. The Daily Mail's terribly angry about it.
So am I.
Well,
it just feels like when you hear people
Why is it
like...
wrong?
Well, I think because when you hear people like Andy talking about the damage to their businesses, you would hope... There's a little place in my heart that goes, at least if they're striking, they're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it for their industry. They're doing it for their own bank account, their family, what they can buy for their family at the end of the month. The idea that they're going to go and stand on somebody else's picket line just to cause disruption and get a free T-shirt...
Well, when you stand on someone else's picket line, what you're doing is you're actually showing solidarity. I mean, secondary strike action is now one of those things that is now illegal. So anybody can stand on a picket line. It doesn't have to be just the striking workers. It can be those people who support those workers who will go there. Yeah, this is a bit of a gimmick, but I think it's a pretty harmless gimmick. And certainly the idea of other people showing some kind of support by going out there and saying, yeah, we're behind you, we're behind the nurses, we're behind the doctors, the ambulancemen, whoever it might be, I don't think is any bad thing.
Andy?
I think it is a bad thing, trying to get people to constantly strike. From where I'm sitting, I'm not in the political world. I have a small to medium-sized business. This affects me. This affects my staff. This affects my customers. So I'll just stay in my lane and say how this affects me. My sister is a nurse, and she said that striking was an unavoidable thing that they had to do. Now, she decided not to strike for reasons that I won't go into. But from where I'm sitting, this is just affecting me and getting people, kind of giving people a reason to strike. How is that helping me? How is that helping people out on the street? How is that helping people get around London?
We've got to be Robert. Do you blame the strikers, or do you blame the government for not giving more money to these people who are working?
It's six of one, half a dozen to the other. If you don't have the money to give people, you can't dole it out. Where are they getting this money from? Unless they start getting creative on tax. Now, when you come to the nurses' strike, why can't you get creative on tax? I was saying it before. If you're on $25,000 a year and you live in North Wales, where I'm originally from, you can get by. If you're on $25,000 a year and you live in London, that's a very different sum of money to be working with. Can you not get creative on frontline nurses paying a slightly different tax bracket?
I mean, there is a London waiting, but it's probably not enough.
But it's not that much.
No.
Is there a geographical way that you can sort tax out so people have more money in their pocket?
There does seem to be a lack of creativity. Andy, thank you. Guys, thank you. Short, sweet. We'll be back in a moment, won't you? Now, I don't know about you, but Christmas is the time of year when we all drink way more than we need, but it's really nice, isn't it? However, to live longer and healthier, we should probably be a little bit more abstemious. So after the break, I'm going to be joined by Don McGregor. He's been sober for 6 years and he'll be advocating for dry January. That's all after your morning's news.
Thanks, Bev. Good morning. It's 10:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Border Force staff and driving examiners are the latest to stage industrial action, with travel disruption also expected along the rail network as commuters return to work. Members of the PCS union representing Border Force staff at multiple UK airports will continue their industrial action over pay, jobs and conditions. Driving examiners have begun a 5-day strike, affecting more than 70 testing centres in eastern England and the Midlands. Meanwhile, on the rail network, TSSA union members will walk out from midday, causing disruption on the Great Western Railway and West Midlands trains. Pope Francis has asked for prayers for his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, saying he's very sick. The 95-year-old former head of the Catholic Church became the first pope in 600 years to resign when he stepped down in 2013. Pope Francis, seen on the left here, made the surprise announcement at the end of his general audience, but didn't give any further details. The family of a 23-year-old man who was stabbed to death at a nightclub on Boxing Day say their hearts are broken. Semi-professional footballer Cody Fisher was attacked on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub in Birmingham. Hundreds of people were in the club at the time. West Midlands Police are urging anyone with information to come forward. The northeast of England could be the latest region to have a directly elected mayor as the government announces a £1.4 billion devolution deal. The arrangement would give powers over education, transport and housing to people across Northumberland, Newcastle and Sunderland. Elections for the new mayor would take place in May 2024 after a consultation process. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel, And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Bev Turner Today. It is 10:39. I think it's Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? Any of my guests know what day it is?
That weird week, isn't it? I think you're about right.
Yeah, it's what I call the merineum, the little bit in between. Claire gets it. The men aren't quite sure about that. Oh, you get that as well. Excellent. OK, good. Well, thank you for joining me. You have been sending me your views. Michelle has said the mentality of the ambulance workers prepared to leave people in perilous conditions, they ought to hang their head in shame. Joanna says when you work in the private sector, if the money isn't there, you don't get an increase. We are all struggling, and I'm not happy to subsidise public sector wages so that I will have to struggle more than them. It's very divisive, this topic, isn't it? And Richard has said there is no travel chaos. It's the best I've ever seen. Smooth, polite, efficient, brilliant service from our superb armed services. I say keep it this way. That's in relation to the Border Force control, because the Border Force workers, which is part of the PCS union, have been replaced by soldiers. And Angie, armed forces soldiers. Listen to me. I don't really know my military language. You can see that's not my strong point. And Angie says public service workers should never be allowed to strike. Strikers are struggling so much financially. They can keep taking days off work to strike. That is except a postie who delivered a parcel to us on Christmas Eve, who can't afford to go on strike and will likely be suffering bullying for his bravery. I had a parcel delivered last minute on Christmas Eve. I literally nearly hugged the parcel delivery guy because it's arrived. Thank you so much. I was so late doing all my shopping. Right, let's get to my next guest. It's the co-founder of The Social Chain, who is also 6 years sober. Dom McGregor joins me now. Hello, Dom.
Hi, Bev, you all right?
Good morning. What's The Social Chain?
Social Chain was a social media marketing business, so working with big brands to help kind of navigate social media.
OK, so can I ask you a personal question? And I'm sure you don't mind because you're on the telly, so you probably don't mind admitting this or not because you're here. Are you sober because alcohol became a problem for you, or in terms of being an alcoholic, or was it just a lifestyle choice from a health point of view?
It definitely became a problem with me. You know, running a business and drinking didn't align with me. I was always someone who kind of found alcohol, that I had a good relationship with it. But when I started to grow up and become more active in terms of life and meeting new people, I found that alcohol was just causing me problems.
In what way, Dom? Like, what are the kind of things that we should look out for? You know, I like a drink, I can't lie. But what are the kind of things that we should look for when it starts to tip over into being problematic?
Yeah, so for me, it was definitely meeting new people and managing relationships. So you'd always wake up in the morning and think, God, what did I do last night? What did I say to that person? Did I embarrass myself? Did I kind of, did I insult someone? Did I, do something embarrassing? So that was kind of a real thing I lived with, was the kind of what people call beer fear in the morning. But also you kind of start to realize the anxiety of drinking continuously. And I think the biggest trait I realized was that I couldn't come home after a bad day or a good day, in fact, and not drink, because it kind of became so habitual in me that anything that happened in my life, I would have to respond by reaching for a drink and having it. And it became kind of like medicine, for example, for any bad day or any stressful day, that I'd just have to have a bottle of wine.
So how did you do it?
It's a very good question, and I think it was something which took a lot of kind of focus and energy. So firstly, admitting to people that I've got a problem, so saying to friends, family that I'm going to try and stop drinking. That was the first part, and that was the hardest part, because you have to admit that you've got a problem. Secondly, there is a little bit of avoidance there. So you have to kind of avoid social situations for a period of time so you're comfortable. Thirdly, you have replacement. So you look at the kind of emotional reaction between drinking and how you feel, and you have to change that. So, for example, if I had a really bad day or a really good day, I'd celebrate by going out for a really nice meal. So it was that kind of emotional response of me drinking and my emotions had to be changed. And then I think finally time, you start to realize the benefits that happen from not drinking through 1, 2, 3 months, and you go, actually this is in itself is quite addictive. So you go, all right, I don't need alcohol in my life, because I'm starting to see my life get better and progress without alcohol in it.
What do you replace alcohol with, Dom? I know it's probably one of the most stupid questions in a way. I mean, I've got a long list of them, but that's one of my stupid questions. Is it that you go for something a bit different? Is it that you just get your Diet Coke or your sparkling water? Like, how? Because that can be the hardest thing, isn't it? To go to the pub and go, I don't really want that glass of water.
Yeah, I think, I'd replace it with food. So if I go out with friends for a meal, or if I go out, I'll eat nice food. So that would be my replacement. In terms of like for like from a drink perspective, you'll find me in the pub having a cup of tea, because I enjoy drinking a cup of tea. So it's personal preference. I don't think that someone who wants to stop drinking has to go, okay, I drink gin and tonic, so I'm going to have to drink no gin and tonic. It's not as binary as that. It's kind of much more like, what do you actually enjoy doing? What do you enjoy in your life? And what is a treat for you? Because I think a lot of people see alcohol as a stress relief or as a treat. So just ask yourself, what do you see as a treat, and then replace it with that.
That's interesting, because I think if we don't drink, we tend to lose, you notice you lose a few pounds, don't you? Because about as much sugar in a glass of wine, I think, as there is in probably a few chocolate biscuits. But if you're replacing it by food, does that not become a problem, that you end up then getting more unhealthy from eating too much?
I did experience that a little bit, but what you're not having in the morning is a massive hangover. So you actually find yourself with the energy to go and do more exercise, go for walks. So not only are you probably having the same calories you're having when you're drinking, but actually you wake up in the morning feeling fresh and going, okay, it's Saturday morning, what am I going to do? Oh, well, I might find myself going for a walk, or I might find myself going for a gym. Or, a lot of people, when in the sobriety process, take up running because they find themselves just having this kind of excess of energy to just throw into something. So you're completely right. Going out there and just replace it straight for straight isn't healthy. But the other thing is you don't have hangovers, so you find yourself in a much better situation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dom. Dom McGregor there, and well done. 6 years without a drink. My panel is still here. I want to come to you, Andy Jones, obviously, as somebody that works in hospitality and owns pubs. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we need people to go out and drink alcohol, because it is a big part of our culture, and it's what keeps we've got
it's a huge part
the
of our
economy
culture.
going round and everything.
It's a huge part of our culture. Now, if you think 35% of my business is wet lead, so I have to have alcohol sales to make the business work, okay? But if I'm looking at it from a personal point of view, if I don't drink, my productivity massively increases. So as a business owner who works 7 days a week, 16, 17 hours a day pretty much, my productivity has to be high. So when I do drink, like Don was saying, if you do wake up with a hangover, your productivity just decreases so much. You don't run your business properly. I have a number 2 that runs the business with me, but I always have to be there as well. So productivity is a big thing from a personal point of view, but as a business point of view, I need people to come in and buy alcohol. I need to sell wine, I need to sell beer.
Absolutely. And isn't the problem as well, guys, right? lockdown was so changing for cultural behaviours in so many ways, and it's pretty well documented that we all drank too much, particularly at our first lockdown when it was all sunny in the garden. We were like, oh my God, I don't have to drive anywhere, and you have a rosé at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And a lot of those habits have been quite difficult to get out of, particularly drinking at home, Nigel, and that's what hits the pubs.
I don't drink, so...
You don't drink at all?
I don't drink at all. No, I agree with Dom. I think that all the benefits of not drinking, no hangover, being able to drive a car whenever you need to, more energy...
I'm going right off you, Nigel, now. I thought we had a lot in common. It turns out we've got nothing in
wonderful,
common.
ready for the day, all those kind of things.
All right.
So lockdown didn't have that effect.
Don't rub it in. Go on, Claire.
Well, I think you're right. I think with lockdown, it became almost sort of socially acceptable at 3 in the afternoon to be sat out in the garden with a glass of wine or a gin and tonic, and it was perfectly fine.
Remember the recycling boxes going out? You could hear all the clinking down the street.
The local bottle banks were absolutely full during lockdown.
Yeah.
They were fuller than they've ever been.
They were.
And I think it's one of those things that some of us enjoy a drink and can do it safely, and I don't drink very much. But with Nigel there, I'd like it as a social aspect. So we don't drink very much at home. I maybe have 1 or 2 drinks around Christmas, New Year, but that's about it. And I think for me, it's a little bit more about control. But I do like to go to a pub and have a proper drink, because a soft drink doesn't really cut it for me. And I know that we found some alternatives for you now, and pubs are coming along to the zero alcohol route. But yeah, sometimes it's just nice to have a gin and tonic in your hand with your friends. I think it's just one of those things. It's a social thing for me. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that.
Did you just decide one day that's it? Have you never really been much of a drinker?
Oh, no, I used to drink like a fish.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, no, it was a health thing. So,
right.
So I stopped because I couldn't carry on doing that.
Is that partly like a Fleet Street thing? It's a journalism culture,
it was journalism,
isn't it?
It was politics, it was all that, and you were just drinking constantly all day. And it sort of comes to an end. The other thing about it is that alcohol then becomes very much part of your character. The worst thing was thinking, ooh, what am I going to be like when I don't drink again? In fact, you just find so many other benefits. I mean, it takes a bit of a while. Yeah. And as Claire says, that now pubs are actually serving up really good non-alcoholic drinks. There's some really good beers out there which don't contain alcohol. Really great cocktails. So where you'd actually be stuck there with a Coke feeling really bored, that's all changed.
They're expensive though, aren't they?
They are expensive.
What is that about? Non-alcoholic gin was on the shelf in the supermarket. It's the same price as normal gin.
They've got you on the hook either way, haven't they? If you want to buy regular gin, so if you want to buy like a seed lip or something like that, that's going to cost you as well. These companies have to make money. I look at it from a business point of view always. We have to sell things to make a profit. Profit isn't a bad thing, okay? So you have to sell it for a certain price. Yeah. But the way I think things could go, would you go to an alcohol-free pub?
Oh, yeah. If
they served really good food and it was alcohol-free, you wouldn't have any of the licensing issues that you have with local councils. I think there's a huge market for alcohol-free pubs.
I think it's a great business model.
It's a great business model.
Surprising in a way. Do you think any country has it? I would have thought, like, Australia must have, like, some of the health conscious...
I'm sure there are some countries that have it, but it's such a part of British culture. Yeah. I actually came to drinking late. I never got drunk till I was 23.
Me too, actually. I've made up for it.
I'm kind of getting there, I suppose. We're doing what I do, OK?
I was about the same,
but as a business model, if you did an alcohol-free pub, really good chef, great food, really interesting selection of drinks, teas, coffees, whatever you want to do, that's a great business model.
Probably.
Very quickly.
I'll be on the phone.
Should we talk about anything else in the papers today? Because you're making me want to drink all this chat. I've lived in a Bucks Fizz-induced haze for the last few days. Right, what else have we got to chat about, guys? What were the other stories that caught our eye? What about churches still haunted by the pandemic? What is that about?
Churches are haunted by modern life.
Go on, Andy.
No one's been going to church for years. I don't know if you're churchgoers or not. I don't know anybody that goes to church anymore. Do you know anyone who goes to church?
Yes, but they're elderly.
It's a generational thing. I haven't been to church, maybe apart from, Hatch, Match, Dispatch.
Yeah.
I don't go to church. I don't know who goes to church anymore. I don't think it's a pandemic thing.
Yeah.
I think it's modern society. We don't go to church.
Well, there was that thing recently, wasn't there, about the fact that for the first time ever we have less than 50% of the UK who identify as being
that's
Christian.
Right. Yeah.
And that might partly, I guess, that's affecting the figures, numbers of people who are part of the congregation. I guess.
You also have a church which has actually left the society it represents behind. And I think that over a number of things, it took them until 2015 to have the first woman bishop. There is still a row over same-sex relationships and whether a same-sex marriage can be blessed in church. If they're not in tune with the way that society is going, certainly, especially young people, aren't going to get involved. So you're absolutely right that it's elderly congregations, and of course they're disappearing.
You know what I have found, though, talking to these elderly relatives of mine who do still go to church, the sense of community, the support they give each other, we should all be incredibly envious of, because that's what we don't realise, how they rally round. A lot of the church communities, they rally around at Christmas. Do you need anything? Can I bring you something? Someone has a baby, someone arrives with a dish. That's, I think, is a real shame that we're losing that sense of community. Where do we get that from now, if not from
And I think
religious communities?
that was one thing that the pandemic showed us. Our local church, Ash Church, put together a sort of virtual service for people and would also sort of stand outside the windows of elderly people's homes to help them get things set up, but also just to keep in touch with people. And that was the one thing you found, that they had endless time and patience. They knew where all the vulnerable community lived, which is something when you're trying to make sure people are OK is absolutely perfect. And they did a really good job. What some of the old people said is they just missed the company of being in church. For them, it was actually about the community and about the comfort that they received. But churches can't continue just with that elderly congregation who are dwindling.
Claire, what's this story about Sadiq Khan's latest plan to make it harder for us all to drive?
Now, this is the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone. So not content just with having London under his grubby little control, he wants to extend that out into parts of Kent, my own county, and further out. And this is not to do with air quality. Let's all be brutally honest. It isn't going to have that much of an impact on air quality. What it is going to do is prop up the failing budget of the London mayor. He needs that money to come in. His administration is failing, so he's going to take it off of people that can least afford it. Those people that live in Greater London, especially in places like Orpington and Dartford, which are nearby to where we live, they need their cars to go around. We don't have a public transport system like London.
I am so sick, Andy Jones, of this war on the car. I don't know whether you saw Jordan Peterson, fantastic psychologist. I adore him, and he did an impassioned defence of the car, and he said it is a radical symbol of autonomy and privacy and freedom.
Absolutely.
Take away our cars, take away our freedom.
I'm a car guy. I drive everywhere. You know, you can't get on a train at the moment, so you've got to drive everywhere, right? You can't wait for a bus. But I drive everywhere. I have a few cars. It's one of my passions in life. I like my cars. 2 of my cars I need to pay the congestion for because they're not Euro 6 engines. I get hammered on my monthly auto pay bill. One of my businesses has 3 vans and 2 trucks for food delivery. Now, I get stung every month with a bill. I had one HGV truck that was pre-Euro 6. I had to go Euro 6 with them. But that was £300 a day to drive through London.
What?
£300 a day.
What?
Exactly. How do businesses afford this? So you have to invest in the future of your vehicles as a business. If you're just driving your car, look at everybody. Look at everybody that owned, like, a 2015 or below, which is probably the majority of car owners around. You've got to pay £12.50 a day. Not only is your insurance higher living near an area that's going to be ULEZ, you have to pay that charge now. Petrol prices through the roof. It's an absolute war on cars.
It really is.
And if you want an electric car, they're like £50,000-60,000.
Nigel, isn't this as well, because there are so many people... I don't know whether Sadiq Khan ever has to take his kids to a swimming club. In fact, I know someone who taught his children to swim, actually. Does he ever have to take them to swimming club whilst picking up the supermarket shop on the way, in the rain, via the office to pick up some paperwork you've left behind? These people don't live in the real world making these decisions for us.
No, but we've all got to actually accept that, well, it depends if you believe in climate change. It then depends if you think we should be going for zero carbon emissions by 2050. If we are going to do all those things, then ultra-low emission zones across the country are going to come in everywhere. As I say, it rather depends if you believe those things are important.
Well, you can
or not.
believe in climate change without necessarily being convinced that it's being caused entirely by man, and whether that is such an emergency that right now we all have to change the way we live our life and bankrupt your businesses and affect our freedom to move. Because that's the cost of that ambition, and that's a conversation I don't think we're having enough in this country. Anyway, thank you all. That's the end of our first hour. We're going to be right back with more after this very short break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, before midday, as border force workers strike at airports across the UK, I'll be asking if it's causing the anticipated disruption or if things are actually running pretty smoothly. And I'll be getting some top tips from a nutritionist and personal trainer on how to get fit in the new year. I know it's a bit early. At least get New Year's Eve out of the way before you think about all that. That is all, though, coming up after a look at the latest news with Tamsin.
Thank you. Good morning from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 11. Border Force staff and driving examiners are the latest to stage industrial action, with travel disruption also expected along the rail network as commuters return to work. Members of the PCS union representing Border Force staff at multiple UK airports will continue their industrial action over pay, jobs and conditions. Driving examiners have begun a 5-day strike, affecting more than 70 testing centres in eastern England and the Midlands. Meanwhile, on the rail network, TSSA union members will walk out from midday, causing disruption on the Great Western Railway and West Midlands trains. Travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder, told GB News that the unions are losing power.
Oh, we got this odd little message coming from the RMT union on Christmas Eve saying, where's the ministers? We want to talk to them. I think there is the sense that talking to individual railway men and women, those in the front line doing fantastic work, they're exhausted. They have lost hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds. The idea is this is an essential industry. Trouble is, the travelling public is sort of saying, no, you're not.
Pope Francis has asked for prayers for his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, saying he's very sick. The Vatican says Pope Benedict had a sudden worsening of health in recent hours, but that his condition was under control and that he's receiving constant medical care. The 95-year-old former head of the Catholic Church became the first pope in 600 years to resign when he stepped down in 2013. Pope Francis, seen on the left here, made the surprise announcement at the end of his general audience, but didn't give any further details.
I would like to ask all of you for a special prayer for Pope Emeritus Benedict, who, in silence, is sustaining the Church. Let us remember him. He is very sick, asking the Lord to console and sustain him in this witness of love for the Church until the end.
The family of a 23-year-old man who was stabbed to death at a nightclub on Boxing Day say their hearts are broken. Semi-professional footballer Cody Fisher was attacked on the dance floor at the Crane nightclub in Birmingham. In a statement, his family say they have lost their best friend. Hundreds of people were in the club at the time. West Midlands police are urging anyone with information to come forward. 4 people have been injured in a suspected gas explosion at a house in Worcestershire. Emergency services were called to the incident in Evesham last night, shortly after 5 o'clock. 3 of the injured were taken to hospital and 10 neighbouring properties were evacuated. The northeast of England could be the latest region to have a directly elected mayor as the government announces a £1.4 billion devolution deal. The arrangement would give powers over education, transport and housing to people across Northumberland, Newcastle and Sunderland. Elections for the new mayor would take place in May 2024 after a consultation process. Labour is warning families are losing millions of pounds due to unsolved crimes. The party says more than 1 million thefts went unsolved last year, with cases dropped because police failed to find a suspect. Labour's called the figures disgraceful. A Home Office spokesperson says the government's provided record investment in policing alongside the recruitment of 20,000 additional officers by March 2023. In the US, a death toll in and around the city of Buffalo has risen to 32 as the country is battling a deadly winter storm. Authorities in the New York state have been digging out from under 4 feet of snow after a record amount of snowfall there. At least 60 people have died as the monster storm has battered North America over the last week. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for joining me. Members of the armed forces have stepped up at airports across the UK as Border Force staff strike again. Is it fair that they have to give up their time to cover for the workers who've walked out? And is the strike causing any actual disruption? We'll be live at Gatwick Airport. Then I'll be taking a look at the Ukraine war. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has issued an ultimatum. Either Ukraine gives in to the demands of the Kremlin or the army decides the fate of the nation. I'm going to be speaking to a superb Russian expert right here in the studio. Plus, if you sat there making your way through the remaining After 8 minutes, I don't blame you, but don't go anywhere, as we may just inspire you to get rid of those pesky pounds in the new year. I'm going to be speaking to a personal trainer and nutritionist to get their top tips. I think that was speeded up footage of people in the gym. You don't have to run at that speed. And of course, I want your views. Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. More serious issues now than someone going at 70 miles per hour on the running machine. Right. In the latest round of strike action, Border Force staff are walking out today at UK airports until New Year's Eve. The PCS union has warned that industrial action could continue for months unless the government enters into talks over pay as the cost of living rises. It coincides with further disruption on the railways as many commuters return to work following the Christmas break. Our national reporter Theo Chikomba is live at Gatwick Airport, where it looks like it is still grey and rainy. Theo, but are the queues there as these striking workers would hope?
Yes, that's the question we've been asking this morning. Just a few moments ago, I heard from Gatwick Airport, and they're saying they're expecting no disruption, and there hasn't been any disruption this morning. But what they are saying to passengers who will be making their way here today is to carry some water or drink or food. So in the event there are queues and delays inside the airport, that you have something to keep you going for the time being. But we do know the PCS union have staged another day of strikes today. It's the first of a number of days this week. Last week it was a similar picture. Airport bosses saying the traffic inside the airport was free flowing, and this is not just here but a number of airports across the country, including Heathrow as well, and of course the port of New Haven in the south of England, which has ferries taking people across the waters to places like France. So the next few weeks, the next few months, we don't know how much longer this is going to go on. We've heard from the union themselves saying the government need to sit down with them to get a better pay deal for them. They've been offered 2% at the moment, and have also been talking about their conditions as well working in this industry. So at the moment, no dates of how long this is going to last for, but as for now, union members are walking out today in what could be potentially disruptive for passengers in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Theo. Theo Chikomba there, down at Gatwick. I'm joined now by a political commentator and host of Reasoned UK, Jess Gill. Jess, what is Reasoned UK, first of all?
So basically, we're a YouTube channel dedicated towards young people fighting the left-wing bias within university and in our education system. OK,
so what are your thoughts then on the strikes?
I just think, haven't the British public been through enough? We've just gone through a lockdown. The economy is in absolute state. And now we're basically being pitted against each other. I don't think it's bad that people want a pay rise. I think that's rational. I think people should be ambitious. And I don't think it's unfair that people complain. Again, I think after lockdown, after Christmas, people want to enjoy their time with their family. People want to travel. People want to, enjoy this country after lockdown. But we've not been able to. And now this has just made it worse.
Do you think, Jess, you would... I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying in terms of our sympathy for the striking workers. And I think that pushing this through, all of this action before Christmas, as we've seen actually with the airports, it's not really making any difference. It turns out that the armed forces are better at that job than the Border Force people themselves. That slightly backfired on them. But in terms of public transport, our train network, the public are losing sympathy, I think, because they held these strikes in the run-up to Christmas. Do you think that the RMT and other unions should have waited until the new year and then they might have taken the public with them?
I think, again, I have sympathy for the strikers. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting a pay rise, especially when you're up against the government. You know, in the public sector, strikers are holding the country hostage. It's against the taxpayer rather than a general business. You know, if Amazon goes on strike, you can always go to eBay. But what are you going to do when all the trains are on strike? I know the trains aren't really public, but even Keir Starmer has said that the rail is pretty much nationalised. And I think this is just a problem with government inefficiency. Quite frankly, I think if it moves, privatise it. If it doesn't move, privatise it. As my favourite economist, Walter Block, said, I think that's the way forward.
So you'd like to see a privatised NHS, for instance?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the NHS is completely failing. What's the point of it being free at the point of use when no one can use it with the long waiting lines? It doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the overworked staff, the doctors and nurses who are overworked and underpaid. It doesn't help the patients who desperately need the help. Who desperately need medical treatment. I think the NHS is this massive monopoly and we need to see it for what it is.
But there are times, Jess, when the NHS is superb. You cannot get better service anywhere in the world, particularly in an emergency situation. The NHS and the nurses and doctors who work there is superb under some circumstances.
I mean, I have no problem against the doctors and nurses. My mum's a midwife. I think the nurse and doctors are superb. I think the staff are one of the best things about this country. But I think the system isn't giving anyone a fair deal, quite frankly. And I think reform is desperately needed in all these sectors, especially the NHS. When it comes to people's health, I think that should be prioritised. It shouldn't be, you know, at stake due to ideology.
Do you think your generation, how old are you, if you don't mind?
19.
So you're only 19. Blimey, my 19-year-old is sat at home probably now playing it. Well done for you being here. But do you think your generation are you typical, is what I'm saying, in terms of your generation thinking, well, the NHS will just be privatised? Like, this is, we don't feel it in our hearts. Like, I think there are older generations that we feel that the NHS is something that was worth hanging on to. Do you think you're quite typical in thinking, well, we can live without it?
I don't think I'm quite typical. I think the average young person, let's be realistic, they don't really need to use healthcare as much as elderly people do. So I don't think they've given it much consideration. Again, the idea of the NHS is all coming together and paying for healthcare, you know, so the poor get healthcare as well as the rich. I think that's a noble cause, but in reality, it just results in everyone worse off. You know, like Thatcher said, they don't care about the rich being, no, they don't care about the poor being poorer as long as it makes the rich poorer. I think that's true with the NHS.
OK. Thank you, Jess. Lovely to meet you. Jess Gill there from Reasoned UK, one of the few 19-year-olds who's out of bed at this time on the week between Christmas and New Year. Now, the strike is set to continue for 4 days. It's not clear how much disruption it will cause. This is the Border Force. But for passengers worried about getting stranded, what action can you take if the worst happens? Well, joining me now is someone who travels the world for a living. She's seen it all, experienced being stranded herself. Lee Boatwright owns her travel PR firm and joins me now. I love the fact that your name is Boatwright. There's a bit of nominative determinism right there, Lee.
Thanks, Bev.
So how bad is it right now for people who are trying to travel, go on holiday? Have you ever seen it this bad?
No, I haven't.
So what would your tips be for people who, you know, right now we've heard that this week is when most people will book their holidays, actually. I was seeing a thing in the news this morning that this is the week when most people are going to get online, we're going to book a holiday, we need some sunshine, right? We need something on the horizon to aim for. What do you think it's going to... Do we have certainty that we should book those holidays this year? Because we've had so much uncertainty, haven't we?
I think you can go ahead and book. My advice to anyone would be, if you're booking a holiday, make sure you're going with a tour operator, an airline or a travel company that is ABTA and ATOL protected. I would also book on a credit card rather than a debit card, because a credit card can give you extra protection if anything goes wrong. In the height of the pandemic, I had several flights booked from, you know, smaller airlines, European to European destinations, to, you know, long haul destinations. And instead of hanging on for hours and hours on the phone to the actual airline to get a refund, which they were at the height of the pandemic, those were the anticipated waiting times. I called my credit card company and I just had to give them the details of my flight, when I was due to travel, and my credit card company were amazing, and I had all my flights refunded.
What do you think are going to be the popular places this year, Lee, to go on holiday? Where are we going to see people maybe moving back towards? Because obviously the pandemic and the lack of travel kind of just ripped up all the rules, didn't it? And I feel like it's all kind of settling in a different place now. Where should we look to this year? Where's going to be popular?
Popular destinations, I think the Indian Ocean will still remain really popular. The Maldives was booming throughout the pandemic. The latter part of 2020 really saw an uptake in bookings to the Maldives, and I do think the Indian Ocean is going to be strong, as well as European destinations, especially places like Portugal. It offers, it's a short-haul destination. It offers the sun, the sea, the sand that most of us Brits crave.
Do you think we're seeing, because of course if you haven't had the COVID vaccines, you still can't travel to America, or if you've not had enough of them, you still can't travel to America. I'm not quite sure what the rules are around Australia. I don't think it's quite that in the same way now. But do you think there'll be a lot of people who are still feeling like, PCR tests and lateral flow tests, it all still quite fresh in people's memories, isn't it? That it will put people off, or are we desperate to get back on a plane?
I think, most people, I know I was desperate, absolutely desperate to get back on a plane. And, the travel industry does need people in order to survive, to book, to travel. And there are certain things that you can do to make your journey so much easier. So, for example, I believe in pre-preparation and planning prevents poor performance. And if you spend about 10 to 15 minutes really thinking about what you're putting in to your hand luggage, most airlines give you a hand luggage allowance of between 5 and 8 kilos. You do have to check with your airline to see what their allowance is. But within those 5 to 8 kilos, you can really pack wisely on that. So, for example, I've been caught short with a connecting flight. My luggage didn't arrive in the destination. And from that, I've learned, if I'm traveling to a hot country, Indian Ocean, for example, I always pack in my hand luggage a spare, I pack a bikini. I pack a caftan, I pack a pair of flip-flops, and I also use my liquid allowance really well. So you get 100 ml, which is quite generous. You can fit it, you get a regulation size bag, and within there I pack a mouthwash, I pack a face cream, I pack a toothbrush, I pack a toothpaste, I pack a miniature perfume and a little hairbrush, and it's surprising that how you can feel.
You can manage. OK, Lee, thank you. Top tips, Lee Boatwright there, owner of Travel PR Firm. Right, coming up, I'm going to be back with my panel in just a moment to discuss the top stories of the day, including how fad diets can actually put more weight on us. Lots to discuss. That's after the break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
A very good morning. It's 11:22. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. You've been sending in your views as I asked you. Thank you. The range of ongoing strikes are on your radar as much as they are ours. Rob has said, let them strike for as long as they like. Our leaders need to show a bit of Thatcher spirit. When they're broke and fed up, they'll go back to work just like the miners did. And Wes says, perhaps it's time to totally disband the Border Force, use the money saved to expand the armed forces and give them the job of protecting our borders. And Michelle has said maybe the right to strike shouldn't be fundamental. This chaos and disruption is outrageous and completely unacceptable. And Duncan has said the solution to the strikes are to no longer use the Royal Mail, make the country car friendly again, offer an ultimatum to nurses of return to work or get sacked. Let's outlaw trade unions. They're not fit for purpose anymore. I can feel Nigel Nelson beside me just shaking his head in disbelief. The days of the workers having any power are gone, Nigel Nelson. Right, I'm going to come to you guys in just a moment. Now, Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has issued a stark warning to Ukraine, stating that either the country fulfills the Kremlin's demands or the army will decide the fate of the nation. This comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed that Moscow is ready for peace talks to end the war in Ukraine in a state-televised interview on Sunday. He said it's not us who refuse talks, it's them. Well, let's bring in our Russian specialist, Danny Armstrong. Danny, thank you so much. Good to see you. So what did he say, Putin, in his address? And was it anything that we haven't heard before?
Well, not really. I mean, they've been banging this drum for peace talks, well, even before the invasion, when there was that back and forth between the US and NATO and the threats that Russia said, look, we don't want you encroaching on these red lines that we have. Of course, that was the failure to guarantee that Ukraine wouldn't join NATO and then the fallout from that. What Sergei Lavrov, his second in command, has pretty much said, the foreign minister, is that you still need to accept our proposals for the demilitarization and denazification. I know that speech very well when Vladimir Putin came out and announced the invasion into Ukraine. I was the first man to voice those words in the English language. Of course, I was on air for RT when the news broke. that is pretty much the same as what Lavrov has said now. He says, look, you need to accept these proposals. Russia has said many times that they're open for peace talks, but it's a kind of bit of a gaslighting going on. We've seen this in Minsk in March and in Turkey as well, after those talks in Minsk came to no conclusion, that Russia is saying, look, you can stop this at any moment. He said, Lavrov, this is mindless, senseless resistance from the Kiev regime. Of course, it's as we see that mindless resistance is purely defending the nation, defending Ukraine from an invasion. But of course, that kind of back and forth game of, well, you can stop this at any time. All you need to do is lay down your arms and let us. His message to the Ukrainian people is that we're not targeting you. We're targeting the Kiev regime, and that's all we want: denazification and demilitarization. Of course, they're very, very good and very, very effective pretexts for war and for this invasion that Russia have used to their advantage.
But here's the thing, Danny, right? So everyone always says about Putin, well, he says this now, he says that, but then he'll want more. He says that, but we'll want more. But he's never said he wants more. We have no evidence that he would want more. And he is a very sentimental man. He's very sentimental about Russian history, isn't he? In his on the speech that he gave when he invaded Ukraine, it wasn't about, I want to take over Europe. It was, I think the USSR and I think Russia, what we should be, we should just have our territories back, which are ours.
Well, yeah, I mean, this great headline that, Putin wants to return to the USSR, of course, it's not territorially a return to the USSR, of course, with all the former member states of the Soviet Union. It's to the status of the USSR when Russia was revered, respected, and was a major world force. That's where he gets most of his support from, especially within the very ultra-patriotic Russians. And they see him as the man to return Russia to that former status.
We've had Zelensky flying out to the White House for some reason, inexplicably still wearing his sort of army combat gear, getting out of the helicopter and walking up the steps. I don't trust him, Danny Armstrong. I know that might be a controversial thing to say. Before this war, he was considered to be the most corrupt, head of the most corrupt regime in Europe. That's very, very true. And there's a couple of outlets. I'm not sure whether it's a Kiev Post or Kiev Independent, so I won't name them right now because that could be a bit dangerous. But they saw Zelensky as this kind of media figure. He was a comic and an actor before he came to power, in much the same vein as Donald Trump. He was seen as carrying on the corruption of his predecessors, Poroshenko and Yanukovych. If there's one thing that he says that he doesn't have, one thing that he does have in his arsenal, it's a very, very good PR company and very, very good PR people behind him. They're pushing, that are making him out to be like this sort of this head of state that won't wilt in the force of the Russian aggressors, which might be true. But he's now Time Man of the Year, and why would he want to stop? Why would he want to sit down to peace talks when he has billions of dollars funneled into the country? Absolutely.
That's the other argument for these.
Well, it is. I don't see it ending anytime soon, and I'm afraid my patience is running rather thin. Not with the Ukrainian people, who I feel for, desperately sad. Their lives are ruined, but I can't help but think there's some powerful men behind the scenes who could bring this to an end if they wanted to. Danny Armstrong, thank you so much. Right, my panel are back here. Former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, political editor at the Sunday People Nigel Nelson, and owner of Bar Jones and Sons, Andy Jones. Right, Claire. Vulnerable 16 and 17-year-olds placed in unregulated housing after leaving the care system. What's this story about?
Right, there are 80,850 children in the social care system, and many of them are living in accommodation which is for adults. Now, these are 16 and 17-year-olds. There is this kind of gap that they seem to fall down. The government did put a review in the care system in place and said that anybody 15 and under would not be placed in these kind of pieces of accommodation, but 16 and 17-year-olds were thought to be robust enough to last on their own. Now, anybody who has got a teenager, as I know you do and I do, I couldn't imagine them living independently in accommodation with grown adults without somebody to care for them. And I think this is the real sadness, that they are now going to be targets for criminal gangs. These are still, in all intents and purposes, children, and we're letting them live in a bedsit without somebody to just make sure that they've got food in, that they can deal with the bills that are coming through, they can get to college or university.
Such a vulnerable age.
It is a completely vulnerable age, and I think it's just extraordinary that here we are at the end of 2022 and this is the case. So there needs to be some urgent reforms going on. To live with ex-prisoners when you're 16 years old, I can't imagine how frightening that would be.
Awful. Right, Nigel, so Lindsay Hoyle has been saying that democracy has died. Why?
Well, largely because everything's been happening this year.
I mean, I kind of agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, his point is that Britain is now the world's laughingstock when it comes to democracy. He dates it to Brexit. This is not a criticism of Brexit, simply that it did divide people, divided families. And we've also had this extraordinary sight this year of 3 prime ministers in 3 months, the last of which was never elected by anybody.
Yeah.
So none of this actually feels like very democratic. And Lindsay Hoyle, being the Speaker of the House of Commons, the House of Commons is meant to be the mother of parliaments for all other parliaments in the world. And I think his point is we can't even get our own democracy right.
It really does. You kind of have to sort of scratch yourself, pinch yourself, don't you, Andy Jones, when you go, we have got a Prime Minister that literally nobody voted for. Another one.
Well, they did vote for him, but he lost. When people did get a chance to vote for him, he actually lost. But here he is, sat on the political throne. So how does that work out, you know? If I got fired from somewhere, I wouldn't, you know, kind of backdoor myself back in to run the company again. It's very bizarre.
Isn't it? And it just is no wonder, really, that there's so little faith in the Conservative Party at the moment. That's what we were talking about. So no wonder that people have lost trust, because we felt like there was never any answers to how that decision was made.
Well, that's right. I mean, it was bad enough when we ended up replacing Boris Johnson with a Prime Minister who was elected by 0.04% of the population. I mean, that was bad. But then when you get to your third Prime Minister and no one puts a vote down at all, it doesn't say very much for our democracy. What he should have done, of course, is, if he'd believed in it, is gone out and got his own mandate and called a general election.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Claire, remind me, because you were on the telly with me at the time, you were a Rishi Sunak fan, weren't you?
I think fan was probably a big word to
the lesser of two evils.
And that's what it came down to. The choice I was given was between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of make your own decision. I know there will be people that disagree with this, and I thought that Rishi Sunak would be the better of the two. I mean, Liz Truss didn't last...
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes, 45
Shortest
days.
sitting Prime Minister in history.
A lettuce overtook her in lifespan terms. But was he my first choice? No, he wasn't.
Do you feel like you know what he stands for now? Do you feel like you know what Sunakism is?
I don't, and that's the most worrying thing. As a Conservative, you don't know what these people stand for. Where has the Prime Minister been over the last 6-8 weeks when all of these strikes are taking place, when the country is in complete chaos with strike action, with the cost of living crisis, gas and electricity? He has not been visible. And the one thing you need is your Prime Minister to be out there and visible and reassuring you. Even if you don't agree with what he's going to say to you, you need to see him.
Absolutely. Well, we've just seen a few clips of him when he was doing his the super committee, the select super committee, where he was grilled in inverted commas quite recently. And that's probably the most we've seen of him. And he was deeply unimpressive.
And I think that's your real problem, is that he doesn't have the personality of Boris Johnson. Now, whether you agree with Boris Johnson or not, he had that personality that people enjoyed. They wanted to listen to him, and he was the best campaigner, I think, that we've ever had. I didn't agree with him, but you can't take that away from him.
OK, we've got to move on, guys. I'm going to be taking a look in just a moment at how to lose those pesky pounds after Christmas. I'm going to be speaking to a personal trainer and a health coach to get their tips. I hope you're all ready, guys. That's after your morning's news with Tamsin.
Thanks very much, Bev. Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 11:34. Well, let's just start by bringing you some breaking news. In the last few minutes, police say they've arrested 2 men on suspicion of murder in connection with the stabbing of a 23-year-old in a Birmingham nightclub. West Midlands police say a 22-year-old was arrested in Birmingham city centre last night, and a 21-year-old was also arrested in London. Semi-professional footballer Cody Fisher was stabbed to death on the dance floor of the Crane nightclub on Boxing Day. Hundreds of people were in the club at the time, and his family have said their hearts were broken following his death. So that news just in, 2 people arrested in connection with the death of Cody Fisher. Border Force staff and driving examiners are the latest to stage industrial action, with travel disruption also expected along the rail network as commuters return to work today. Members of the PCS union representing Border Force staff at multiple UK airports will continue their industrial action over pay, jobs and conditions. Driving examiners have begun a 5-day strike affecting more than 70 testing centres in eastern England and the Midlands. Meanwhile, on the rail network, TSSA union members will walk out from midday, causing disruption on the Great Western Railway and West Midlands trains. Pope Francis has asked for prayers for his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, saying he's very sick. The 95-year-old former head of the Catholic Church became the first pope in 600 years to resign when he stepped down in 2013. Pope Francis, seen on the left here, made the surprise announcement at the end of his general audience. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today. Thank you for joining me. It's 11:39. Now, I know we're all feeling a little bit What's the word? In fact, let me come to my panellists and ask them what the word is for this time of the year. Ali Ahmed, a personal trainer, and also Sajatadin, nutritionist. How are we feeling this time of the year, guys? Sluggish? Lethargic? Sajata, how are you feeling?
I'm actually feeling quite
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. How are you feeling, Ali?
Yeah, I'm not too bad.
Oh,
Very well,
great.
thank you.
Right, OK, well...
How are you feeling?
No, I'm feeling a bit tired. I've drunk too much. I've eaten too much. I've eaten all the things I wouldn't normally eat, right? That's the thing, isn't it, this time of the year, Sajata?
Yeah, it's
too
all
much
there
chocolate, too much cream, mince pies, loads and loads
and
of
you have
protein.
some there, I can see.
Yeah, no, that's just props. They've probably been there for about 2 weeks, to be completely honest. But what do we do now, right? We've got the best of intentions, Sajata. At this time of the year, we're all feeling a bit fat. What do we do now?
I think it's actually about planning ahead rather than just diving into January saying, I'm going to stop doing everything. I think if you just plan ahead and say, you know, I actually want to make changes and focus on just doing maybe, I always say do 3 things or maybe 5 things. And even if 3 is too much, maybe just focus on a few things that you can do every day and make it fun and make it something that actually fits into your daily life rather than doing something that is so far from how you normally live. Because if you can do it every day, and you can do it living in your own family rather than having to, you know, go away for a retreat. You'll actually be finding that this then allows you to get more energy, to lose the belly bloat, and, you know, to maybe even drop a dress size.
It's similar, Ali, isn't it, with exercising, that often people think, right, that's it, I'm going to run a marathon, I'm going to do a triathlon, and that's going to get me fit. But sometimes we set the goals too high, and then you fall off that particular track, don't you?
No, absolutely. So it's all about balance, and like Sajata said, I totally agree with her. If we were to set some goals, some micro goals to get to your macro goal, I think that's the way forward.
What do you think of smartwatches?
Smartwatches...
a lot of people will have got them in their stockings this year. My daughter got one this year from a family member. She's only 13. I'm not a massive fan.
To be honest, what I say to my clients is what you've just said to me, actually. They're good in certain ways, in terms of, obviously, the calories, the walking, the steps. But you don't want to be too obsessed by the watch itself.
Yeah.
It's about balance.
Sometimes when your hand's moving, it's actually counting some steps in some cases.
Absolutely.
So it's not as accurate because you might just be, you know, doing things.
I said to her, I was like, that's all very well. Look at your watch to see how many steps you've done. That's great. But don't lose connection with your own body. Listen to your own body. Don't just always think you've got to go to a piece of tech, right?
Yeah.
You brought some food with you, Sajata. Yeah. What are these? Is this an alternative to our fattening chocolate treats?
Yeah, so this is just a very simple homemade snack. You know, if you like Snickers chocolates, this is an alternative to that. It's just made with everyday ingredients like oats, peanut butter, cacao powder or chocolate powder, some honey. So these are things that, you know, we can do at home ourselves. Just make something simple.
They look like the kind of things you put out for the squirrels. Were you thinking the same thing?
I've heard that a lot.
You were thinking that,
a lot of clients have said that over the years.
But how do you sell them to the kids? Because they're going to go, I'm not going to eat that, Mummy. I want a Snickers.
I think once they try them, and you don't need to necessarily say, oh, this is really healthy, because the minute you say this is, you know, a health food, people go, I don't want to eat it, it's not going to taste nice. But just let somebody try it, and if they like the taste of it, then that's fine. But you don't need to go and have something like this. You know, you could just take a regular brownie recipe, which is what most kids like. So if the recipe says 100 grams of sugar, could you reduce it down to 90 grams and then maybe 80 grams? And you know, just tweak and make swaps within your own recipes.
Yeah.
So,
Ali, you said about these micro goals rather than these massive ambitions. So give us an idea of what kind of things can we factor into our day?
Well, it's just the basics. It depends on the person and the individual to start with. Their background, their age, have they got any underlying illnesses that we need to be aware of, and then slowly, gradually build them up through bodyweight exercises, whether it be a basic plank or a squat. And then as they go through that period, then look to make it a little bit more difficult, a bit more challenging for them.
You know what I do? I do my squats while I'm cleaning my teeth. Every day, so twice a day, I'll clean my teeth. I do my squats while I'm doing that. That's the kind of thing you're talking about, isn't it? Just these little movements, factor them in.
Especially, obviously, through COVID times, we have to modify and challenge ourselves in different ways because we didn't have the gym facility. So how do we do that? We do that by, like you said, at the sink, doing some squats, a couple of cans, do some reverse flies.
Dips at the kitchen
dips on
table.
a table or chair. Just basic things like that to start with. And then once you know, I was saying back stage with Sujata, it's important to also know the psychological side of the person that you're dealing with, as well as the physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Sujata, one tip then for food, just one. We've got 10 seconds.
One tip for food would be, can you include more vegetables? I think that's one food group I see so many people not having enough of. And make the vegetables taste good, whichever kind of vegetables you like, just any vegetables.
Thanks, guys. And it's the first time someone said backstage as though this is a glamorous environment in Valley.
The green room.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Now, the festive season is... we've done this. Just talk amongst yourselves a minute while I get us to where we're supposed to be. We're going to go through a lovely little package, I think, that Cameron Walker has done for us. And this is about the fact that the 8th of September was a day that will go down in history. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II died, of course, peacefully at her summer retreat. And Cameron Walker has looked back on that day and the events that followed.
The news that everyone was dreading happened. Buckingham Palace has announced that the Queen has died peacefully at Balmoral.
A day that is now etched in history.
Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her.
Thousands gathered at royal residences to lay flowers and Paddington bears. A nod to Her late Majesty's surprise sketch at her Platinum Jubilee. Immediately, Charles ascended the throne and was formally proclaimed king at the Accession Council in St James's Palace. Politicians, past and present, united in grief despite their party differences.
He'd lost his mother on the Thursday. Here he was on the Saturday morning, standing in front of all of his Privy Councillors. They're his Privy Councillors now.
The King paid tributes to his beloved mother and renewed her pledge of lifelong service.
Hi everyone, thank you so much.
An olive branch from Prince William to his brother Prince Harry, when the siblings reunited to greet the public with their wives and view flowers outside Windsor. Any reconciling was short-lived. The Queen's coffin, accompanied by her daughter Princess Anne, was driven to St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh to lie at rest. An opportunity for the people of Scotland to pay their last respects to the Queen of the United Kingdom. An RAF C-17 flew Her late Majesty back to London. The state hearse, specially designed for the public to see inside, drove down crowd-lined streets before one final night in Buckingham Palace. A well-rehearsed ceremonial procession brought the Queen to Westminster Hall so the public could pay their last respects as Her late Majesty lay in state.
People would queue for hours on end. They'd finally get in, and it would be 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and it just happened so beautifully and so peacefully.
The state gun carriage of the Royal Navy, pulled by 142 Royal Naval ratings, took Queen Elizabeth II's coffin to Westminster Abbey for the state funeral. At the King's request, the wreath on top of the coffin contained flowers from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Highgrove. The royal family's dignity and stoicism shone through in the face of unimaginable grief. Princess Charlotte's choice of brooch, in the shape of a horseshoe, was gifted by her great-grandmother, the Queen. She, alongside her future king brother George, processed behind the coffin with their parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales. A state hearse to Windsor Castle for the committal service. More than 800 people, including the Queen's personal staff, filled St George's Chapel, in stark contrast to Prince Philip's funeral, where just 30 people could attend because of COVID restrictions. The imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. The King then placed the Queen's camp colour of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The wand broken, creating the symmetry with the 3 instruments of state being removed, ready to be passed on to their successor. The Queen was buried with her late husband Prince Philip in a private service in the King George VI Memorial Chapel. Back together for eternity. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm joined now by my mega brain news hound. Claire Pearsall is here again, and Nigel Nelson, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and owner of restaurant Jones and Sons, Andy Jones. Right, Andy, this is a story that's page 8 of the Express today. Failure to bring in the ban on the junk food ads is disappointing. This is a conversation between, effectively, George Osborne, former Chancellor, and Jamie Oliver, criticising Rishi Sunak for not bringing this in sooner. Would it make a difference, do you think, banning advertising on junk food?
I think if people want to eat junk food, they're going to eat junk food. I think if they're going to pump millions and millions into advertising like they do, why can't that be taxed a little bit more? Why can't we start taxing these bigger companies for the dominance they have over the sector? You know, they have so many ways of selling their food now, Deliveroo, Uber Eats. They dominate every high street in every town in the country. Yeah. What about the small independent restaurant like mine that's falling by the wayside because you say, hey, I don't want to secondary party delivering my food to a substandard level. They don't need to spend as much on this. You can't turn on the TV without Maya Jama doing a McCrispy advert. They pumped so much money into this. It's not needed. Did people stop smoking when they banned advertising for smoking? You know, if people want to do something, they're going to do it anyway. What is the effect that glorifying junk food has on the NHS long term?
What do you think, guys? Because I don't like banning anything, to be completely honest, but it does feel like that the behemoth that is the food industry is so huge that for parents in particular...
Yes, for kids.
It's really hard for us because we are up against such a machine.
Yeah, but the answer is, when it comes to children, they shouldn't be exposed to this stuff any more than necessary. So certainly a ban on the advertising. We're not saying don't eat it, so it's not like a ban on the food. You're just saying let's not encourage kids to go down the wrong route.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think there is a place for it. Sort of, it looks like that's a pre-watershed time where younger children are perhaps watching programmes and they shouldn't be subjected to adverts for junk food. However, when they're teenagers, I don't know about you, but mine doesn't actually watch television.
They don't?
He'll watch streaming services. He will look at TikTok, YouTube, all of those kind of things where the advertising is still going to be there anyway. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a minimal impact, and it really is down to parents to not buckle under the pressure, which is easier said than done.
Yeah, Jamie Oliver, who basically edited this radio show that George Osborne did, was saying that he believes that the sugar tax should be used to then extend the provision of free school meals. And it does seem logical that if you take money from these companies via a sugar tax and you use that to pay for healthy school meals where the kids don't get a choice.
Absolutely.
That's kind of, you know, but it's the choice element. Right, Claire, talking of food, fad diets make us fat, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, isn't this...
Is this the front page of the Times?
It is front page of the Times, and it's
News Week.
that time of year where we are all looking at the excesses of Christmas and going into the new year. But I think that we all know that fad diets and get thin quick doesn't work. It takes a lot of discipline, it takes exercise, it takes healthy eating and a mindset to want to do it. So it's always this time of year we get inundated with all of these tips on how to lose weight and how to shed the pounds, how to look bikini ready. And you just think, you know what, it's the end of December. If I want to do it, I will do it, and I'll have to do it in my own way, because unfortunately I'm one of those people that's ever so slightly lazy until I have the motivation that I want something, and then I will throw everything at it. But, you know, I think that these dangerous diets, restrictive diets, are not great, and teenagers are always at risk of falling into that.
This is from the British Dietetic Association, which represents 10,500 qualified dietitians, urging people, so they've all come together to basically tell us all, don't do anything crazy. You know, they say avoid the boiled egg diet, the water diet. They're even including the keto diet, but I'd say that's a little controversial. Do you also worry, Andy, though, as you've got a couple of kids, I know, but this normalisation of bigger body image, I find actually quite concerning?
Listen, it depends on your body type, right? OK, I'm, you know, as you can probably see, I'm a little bit big-boned. It's December, I'm a bit jowly. I own a restaurant.
Oh, you're not jowly,
I
Andy.
eat lots of restaurant
I'd say
food
you're sort
5
of
days a week.
rugby-ish.
I'd prefer footballers, but it's not the case anymore. OK, my wife, very tall, very lean. She is actually a vegan who only eats alkaline food. So when we go for a guy who owns a restaurant, yes. So when we go to a restaurant, it's like, oh, what are we going to eat today? But she looked incredible. She's incredibly healthy. She's incredibly lean. You talk about being bikini ready. She's that 365...
All right, you're just showing off now.
I'm not showing off. I just wish I could be more like her with my diet, and I'm not.
So what does she eat that's just alkaline? What does that mean?
Oh, you'd have to speak to her, but it's...
You mean you haven't taken an interest in this?
I have, because I like to cook at home. When I'm at home, I like to cook. So she replaces rice with teff.
What on earth is teff?
It's... Again, I don't know too much. It's something that's in a box in my cupboard that I add water to and a bit of seasoning and make it taste, you know, acceptable. But the way she eats, she gets all her food from very small suppliers. She even travels down to... We live in North London. She travels down to Brixton to go to one particular supplier that only do alkaline vegetables. She's incredibly strict with it. She's great with the kids. She allows the kids to eat a bit of chicken, a bit of this, a bit of brown rice. But the kids are very, very healthy. And I'm an advocate for it, you know, verbally, but as you can probably see, not so much physically at the moment.
Well, that's exactly the kind of fatty diet that we should not be promoting here, but we're all incredibly excited to learn a bit more about it. Right, we've come to the end of the show. It has flown by. Thank you to Claire, thank you to Nigel, thank you to Andy. Thank you for watching as well. Enjoy your new year. I'm going to be back after the new year. I don't know what day that's going to be. I think it's Wednesday. I think it's a week today. But coming up next is Mark Longhurst. I'm Bev Turner, and have a lovely new year.
Hello there, welcome to your weather update. I'm Claire Nazir. Here are your headlines. Windy today with coastal gales as rain pushes northwards. The risk of hill snow later across Scotland and some showers to follow. Your bigger picture, low pressure firmly in charge. Now, the ice warning across Scotland eases through the morning, but this rain warning across southern parts of Wales as well as the West Country extends through the afternoon. It's wet outside through this lunchtime. You can see the rain slowly moving towards the central belt of Scotland, where it will be heavy. Rain also for Northern Ireland, covering much of the Midlands, northern England. Drier further north with some cloud further south and southwest. We'll see some brighter skies emerge, but also some showers. And those winds will be relentless, but delivering some milder conditions to the south of that weather front. Now, overnight, the rain continues its passage northwards, returning towards the west as we head through the evening and overnight, and more showers gather across northern England, Wales and the West Country. Some clearer skies further east, but still a few showers here. Now, it's going to be a windy night, keeping temperatures up away from the far north, where it will be a chilly start to the day on Thursday, even with a little sunshine, but rain never too far away. Now, through Thursday, we watch as showers continue to track in on that strong wind across England and Wales. We'll see some wet weather for Northern Ireland around lunchtime, as well as Western Scotland, and that again will ease as it eases towards the east. So some wet weather across many areas, but sunshine and showers for England and Wales. Some of these showers will be on the heavy side, and temperatures are notched down on today. Now, through the evening and overnight, we watch as another batch of rain arrives across Ireland. Some clearer skies ahead of it. Temperatures will take a tumble, but it does mean a bright start to the day come Friday morning across these parts. Generally speaking, as we head through the next few days, the last few days of 2022, it remains unsettled, but some dry weather through New Year's Eve and into New Year's Day across some parts.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue,
Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 12 noon, you're with GB News Live, and I'm Mark Longhurst. Coming up for you this hour, Britain's armed forces manning passport control at the country's airports once more, covering for striking border staff who've walked out with 4 days of industrial action this time. It's the second round of strikes by the PCS union over pay. Holidaymakers being warned they may face long queues, but many observing the airports operated more smoothly the last time forces personnel were in charge. We'll have an update live from Gatwick.